Welcome to the CCFR Radio Podcast, your source for news, updates, and stories from the CCFR.
Hey everybody, welcome to episode 120 of the CCFR Radio Podcast. I'm your host, Rod Giltack, and thanks for joining me again today on the podcast. I'm going to bring on Tracy to talk about this massive RCMP liberal government scandal, and it's I don't want it to be lost on anyone actually how big this is. But anyway, I'm not going to talk too much before I bring on Tracy, and this podcast will be fairly short. As it is, because this is a really big story. Anyway, before we get started, I want to talk about our sponsors. Vortex, the force of optics. So thanks to our friends over at Vortex Canada for continuing to support the podcast. We really appreciate that. You can check out all their great stuff at vortexcanada.net. That's vortexcanada.net. Also, our great friends over at the Saskatchewan Rivers chapter of Safari Club International. They do a lot of great work over there, and that includes supporting the CCFR, and they've been really, really great to us. If you want to check out all the great work they do, you can find them at saskriversSCI.com. That's saskriversSCI.com. And our new sponsors, CTOMS. CTOMS Academy provides life-saving training in trauma care and human performance. It's perfect for outdoor enthusiasts, hunters, shooters, anyone wanting to be prepared for emergencies. You can check them out at ctomsinc.com. That's ctomsinc.com. And finally, our great friends over at North Pro Sports in Saskatoon, Saskatchewan. You can find firearms, ammunition, archery, cold weather gear, you name it, you'll find it there. Check them out at northprosports.com. That's northprosports.com. All right. So I want to talk about the this RCMP liberal scandal. Every time you turn around, these liberals are at it again. But anyway, I don't want to talk too much about it. I'm just going to bring on Tracy right now, and we'll cover it together. All right, on the Skype, we've got Tracy Wilson of the CCFR to talk about the most recent and incredibly monstrous RCMP/liberal, and don't forget the NDP, they're the enablers here, Liberal Party scandal. Wilson!
The sound of your voice is exactly how I feel. This is this is a heavy one. This isn't about money or, the normal types of scandals involving the Liberals. This is far, far more sinister.
Yeah, it's wild. Why don't you give us the briefest version that you can of the rundown, and then we'll talk about the really important points that people can't miss, because there's some really, really important points in this story. So go ahead.
Okay, so as you know, you've been a part of it. The Mass Casualty Commission is the public inquiry into the Nova Scotia tragedy. And this has been an ongoing process. This is something the families have fought for. And recently, there's been a new set of documents released. And these are the handwritten notes of RCMP Superintendent Darren Campbell, who was on scene and involved in this tragedy and the investigation into it. So in these handwritten notes, I'm going to give a shout out to the Halifax Examiner, because they actually went through all these documents, found these notes. I can only imagine what they thought when they read them, and of course broke the story. So this is something that could have snuck by quietly. Thankfully, it did not. So basically what it boils down to is RCMP Superintendent Campbell says that Brenda Lucki, under pressure from former Public Safety Minister Bill Blair and the PMO, came to him and to the detachment and said, I need you to release the information about the type of firearm, make and model, whatever, that the killer used. And Campbell's like, well, generally the normal protocol is we don't release that type of information. There's an ongoing investigation into the tragedy itself. There's cross-border investigations to figure out who helped him smuggle these guns into the country, where they came from. That could jeopardize future charges against other people involved. And so he refused to put that information out. Brenda Lucki was furious. And she went back to Campbell, upset that he wouldn't do as she asked. And his notes specifically say, the commissioner said that she had promised the Minister of Public Safety and the PMO that the RCMP would release that information. I tried to explain that there was no intent to disrespect anyone. However, we could not release that information at the time. The commissioner then said that we did not understand and that it was tied to pending gun control legislation that would make the public safer. So here's the thing is, as you know, right after the Nova Scotia tragedy, Bill Blair came out with the sweeping 2020, May of 2020 gun ban, sort of as a reaction to this. They were using this tragedy while it was still unfolding, while people hadn't all been found yet, to start manipulating the grief of the Canadian public to support banning these guns from legal licensed gun owners who had nothing to do with this crime or any other crime.
To support their political agenda.
Yes. It doesn't even sound believable. Like when it sounds like something out of a movie. The problem is Darren Campbell, Superintendent Campbell, would have had no way of knowing about this, proposed gun ban that hadn't been announced yet. This wasn't public information. It would have nothing to do with the tragedy itself, and that's what he was working on. He refused to follow Brenda Lucky's instructions, and she had to explain why she needed him to do it. And he wrote these notes back then, before the announcement.
Yeah, this isn't new.
So for Minister Blair and Brenda Lucky to both deny these allegations now, like they're doing, it's sort of impossible to believe, because Campbell had that written down back then.
Yeah, there are a lot of points here that can't be lost on people. Like you cannot lose some of the salient points. So this isn't, the reason why we're discussing this is not, we're trying to make Blair look stupid. He does a great job on his own. He's the most disgraceful MP I've ever seen in my life in the Canadian Parliament. Like he's monstrous. And same thing with Justin Trudeau, in my opinion. I've never seen anything like it in my life. So we don't really need to cover that, but there's some other points here, is that those two people, for whatever their motivations, I mean, we know what their motivations and their moral shortcomings are. That's one thing. But when they told Brenda Lucky to do this, and this is not some, new member that was on patrol and they plucked her out of nowhere and then stuck her, as the top cop in the entire country. The commissioner of the second largest police force in the world, I believe, I could be wrong about that. She's an experienced police officer. She did it. They told her to do
she
that.
Said, I'll do that.
And she did it. Gift. And she knows full well that releasing that information before investigations are complete on either side of the border could jeopardize bringing the people that were responsible for handing these firearms to the perpetrator of the largest mass shooting in Canadian history. Those people could escape justice. But that wasn't her priority. Priority number one is doing a favor for her political masters. And if anything has shown you that the level of corruption and manipulation and lying, the destabilization of institutions in Canada, like if you needed something else to convince you, if SNC-Lavalin wasn't enough, if WE controversy wasn't enough, if Admiral Mark Norman, which nobody really knows the details of because there's gag orders there, like this is deep, heavy, Banana Republic level corruption. If none of that stuff convinced you, like look at this. It's unbelievable.
It's right there. Yeah. Yeah. And then you got to think too about the survivors, the victims, the families of the victims. This is an entire community that was torn apart. Well, the entire country was, but, in particular. And I think about the lives and the memories of all the people lost, and they weren't even taking that into consideration. It was, how can we use this to manipulate the public to support what we're going to do? Because what we're going to do is going to be big, right? And to me, that's ghoulish. It's ghoulish behavior. Mm-hmm. And it's capitalizing on people's emotions. Mm-hmm. And then you think about the cops too. I mean, the other RCMP officers, there was a lot going on with this tragedy. It lasted over 2 days. The perp was very good at evading police. And of course, this resulted in a high number of casualties. And, there was just a lot of stuff going on. The one person that they should be able to look to for leadership is Brenda Lucky. And what is she doing? She's busy coldly calculating how to use this to provide a political gift.
Undermining her team.
Yeah. Undermining them. Her own team.
Yeah, to do a favor for Justin Trudeau and the absolutely galactically disgraceful Bill Blair. Like,
And now what is she saying now? Like, she denies that this happened.
oh yeah,
Darren Campbell's notes didn't appear out of nowhere.
yeah, because all of those people, Darren Campbell, a superintendent, that's not a low-ranking RCMP member. Oh, he's willing to throw away his reputation and his career. And same thing with all the other cops in that room in that meeting. They're all willing to throw away their careers, to get Brenda Lucky in trouble. Yeah, for sure. And it's funny. There's still some more points, but just before I forget, I saw Brenda talking, I guess testifying or whatever to the to SECU in the study that they did about street violence or whatever. And I was and she looked like unsure, and she really didn't know what was going on, and she looked intimidated when people are asking her questions. I was like, what's going on with this lady, right? Like, I'm like, she's the commissioner of the RCMP. And then I thought, well, I don't want to be judgmental because a lot of times people's personalities aren't that closely tied to their competence, right? Maybe she just didn't have a strong personality, but she was highly competent. I mean, how do you climb to the top of that ladder if you don't know anything about policing, for God's sakes, or leadership, right? And I was like, okay, well, like, I'm not the most charismatic individual, but I know what I'm talking about. And so I'm like, okay, I'll leave that. And like, no, she's exactly how she comes across. She's this person who's at the top of the structure that's willing to basically do anything her political masters say. I mean, who could be convinced? I mean, I don't even think Hank Paulson, it was Paulson was her predecessor. I don't think he could have been convinced to ever even consider doing this. And I don't even know him that well, right? But this is monstrous. Now, the other things that's really important to not get lost in all this stuff is that the RCMP has had a lot of trouble, right? They have a lot of morale issues. They got all kinds of stuff. And this is the leader. In the minute where, the RCMP lost one of their own in this tragedy too. And when everybody needed a strong leader to come out and be like, okay, we're going to do this the right way. We're going to make sure that we do right by the families. Justice will be served. We will catch everyone involved here, and we'll make sure that it never happens again. No. That wasn't even on her radar, it seems. She's like, I got to do this solid to somebody like Bill Blair and somebody like Justin Trudeau. That was the priority. The rest of it was secondary.
Gross.
Oh, it's disgusting. And another thing, Wilson.
Oh.
Think about this. Remember when this all happened and Nova Scotians were screaming and yelling, they want a full public inquiry. And then Bill Blair, of course, as gaslights as he likes to do, he's like, we hear you. You're asking for this and we hear you. So we're going to be doing a full internal investigation. And they're like, yeah, exactly. You asked for an internal investigation. We want public. You asked for an internal investigation and we're going to give it to you. And they were fully, and why did he want to keep that out of the view of the public, right?
Well, why do you think? Now we know.
I think you're starting to figure that stuff out now, aren't we?
Yes.
Yeah. So anyway, first thing in his mind, it's like, well, forget the families, forget all this stuff. I got to cover my tracks because I'm not going to be accountable for any of this stuff. We have a political agenda to roll out. And another thing on top of that, what is that political agenda? We have to get we got to get firearms out of the hands of Canadians, licensed Canadians. Forget the crooks. Forget the criminals. We'll actually lighten sentences. We got to get Rod and Tracy's guns away from them. Right? This is what this is all about. And it's weird because you look at what this is and you're like, these people are the ones that are telling people like me and you that we can't be trusted.
Right.
With guns, and that we just, we're a threat to public safety. We're a threat to the stability of Canada. Like, we have to. Are you crazy? And then you got gun owners that are like, I'm just not going to comply. And I'm like, well, non-compliance is bad. I mean, you've heard me rail about non-compliance a lot because the thing is, when people start ignoring the law, then that's where destabilization comes from, because it's like, well, what laws are you going to choose to obey some laws and not the rest? And that's why laws always have to be minimal, the minimum that you can possibly, legal framework that you can make to solve a problem. And it has to be fair, because if people don't buy in, it's a violation of the social contract. And this is what I'm saying. I'm not, you and I have never been saying like, we want more mass shootings or we want more domestic violence. We've never ever.
That's ridiculous.
We've never disagreed with the idea of the ideas of any other Canadian or even the anti-gunners. We're just saying, but the way that you do that isn't to just take away the guns from people that had nothing to do with that stuff. And guns are valuable. Guns are important, right? But these are the people that I'm supposed to surrender my guns to? And you're gonna get angry at gun owners or look down on them because they're like, you know what, I'm not doing anything. These people are the worst. They're ghouls. I'm not giving them anything.
They call us extremists.
I know. I know.
What?
Yeah. So
I would never in a million years ever even cook up a plan like this, even consider doing something so cold and malevolent and horrible to the people in this country I'm supposed to be representing. Like, I could never imagine it.
Yeah.
So
yeah, well, it's pretty wild, you know, and the government is they're complaining about the trust in institutions, right, is on the decline, and they blame disinformation from right wing whatevers. It's like, I'm telling you that the gaslighting in this country is driving people insane. It doesn't drive me insane because I just don't care. I'm going to do what I'm going to do, and I'm doing the very best that I can to assist the system into just correcting its bad ways, and for all of us just to get along and do what the right thing is for everyone together, or at least the best thing, you know. But I don't blame anybody for not trusting the government or thinking they're always lying, or the media for propping them up, or the NDP. Jagmeet Singh is like, well, you know, oh, this is terrible. It's like, what are you going to do about it, Jagmeet Singh? Are you going to do anything? Or are you just going to continue to just carry water for Justin Trudeau, grab him his lunch from the Mercedes at lunchtime? I don't know.
I don't know where we go from here. I know there's been some calls from politicians in various parties, Jagmeet Singh, Pierre Poilievre, who have been calling for, you know, a full parliamentary inquiry. But
no, public inquiry.
Who can even do this?
Yeah. Look what happens when you have parliamentary inquiries. Nobody gets to see this stuff. This is what Bill Blair wanted, right?
Yeah.
He wanted to cover his tracks. He knew what he did. Like, it's weird because he knows what he did. And that's why he wanted to cover it up. Allegedly.
So here's the problem.
Assumingly.
When you've got this type of behavior from the highest people in the highest offices in the country, who do they answer to? They answer to nobody.
Oh, yeah. That's exactly the way they like it. So I don't know. It's pretty wild. I don't know where it goes from here, but you know, if I was in charge, and I'll never be in charge because I don't want to and have anything to do any more than I already do with any people like this. I don't want them in my life, and I just couldn't do the job. But Brenda Lucki needs to resign immediately.
Oh yeah.
Bill Blair should resign immediately.
Yeah.
And he should be forbidden from ever running for public office again. Justin Trudeau should resign immediately, and there should be an election. There should be an election. These people are the most corrupt, horrible people that ever held office in the history of this country, and that's not hyperbole. So I'm not a fan of hyperbole. They truly are. They've shown it every day. You know, everybody's, I think you shared it too this morning on Twitter, you know, Justin Trudeau's old tweet from 2013. It's like, oh, you know, it's such a shame when you wake up every day to a new government scandal or whatever the hell his tweet was, right? And that's him. That's him.
Well, and not even little scandals like, you know, $16 orange juice or, you know, little things that outrage Canadians.
Let's go back to those days, right?
Yeah, this is devastating, life-changing, life-ruining type of stuff. I mean, I don't know.
Yeah, it's hard to describe it. It's hard to find all the adjectives to describe it.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's wild. Anyway, okay, we're going to keep an eye on all this stuff. And well, maybe we'll do another podcast next week. We'll see how it goes. If there's more to report, we will. And if there isn't, we won't. It'll be 2 weeks from this one. So anyway, thanks for keeping track of this insane scandal, Tracy Wilson of the CCFR.
Well, I'm going to keep at it. I like keeping my thumb on these guys. So.
Yeah, wild. All right, we'll see you next time.
All right, take care.
All right, that's going to do it for this episode of the CCFR Radio Podcast. Before I let you go, I'll let you know that about 8 days ago, the CCFR legal team cross-examined Wendy Sukier of the Coalition for Gun Control. Now, as soon as I get, and the reason why I'm telling you this, as soon as I get the transcripts, I'll be putting them up on propertyjustice.ca, so you can find them there. People ask, you know, what's going on with the court case? This process is really, really slow. So a lot of times I don't answer people because that's why we have propertyjustice.ca. And it's like, well, if you want to see everything that's happened and all the documents or whatever, they're all there. You know, I don't think anyone's ever done that before. And you guys deserve it because you're paying for it. All that stuff is there. So as far as the court schedule is concerned, just off the top of my head, here's an update. If you don't want to go there or you're too busy or whatever, our hearing is coming up in September. Right now, we're finishing up everything with the interveners. So that hearing will happen in September. The judge will reserve judgment because there's a lot of stuff for her to go through and verify and weigh and all that, the rest of that stuff. And then we're expecting a decision sometime in January. And I've talked endlessly about the court case, why we're doing it, what we're hoping to get out of it, all the rest of that stuff. Just remember, it's not a did we win or did we lose? These are very complex proceedings, and the judgment will probably be 50 pages long. So you'd be like, oh, she sort of agreed with this, but there's no action to be taken on this. Oh, she didn't agree with us on that. There's a lot of different points there. So it's not a win or lose, but we're hoping to influence the way that things are done in Canada and provide some kind of legal precedence for some things that might help us in the future. So, and get the OIC thrown out. I mean, I'm a nobody, but in my estimation, like, it should be an open and shut case to throw at the OIC. It was an abuse of power, and it was illegal in some manners. So anyway, just thought I'd throw that out there because that was something that just happened. As far as another podcast is concerned, I'm going to try to maybe do one next week. We'll see if there's enough going on that it warrants that, because there's some other things I wanted to cover as well. Then we'll do it. If not, it'll be the following week, just so you know. Anyway, we can always use more help. If you would like to consider becoming a member of the CCFR or donate, you can do that at firearmrights.ca. That's firearmrights.ca. Thanks for watching. Make sure you share the podcast, and we'll see you soon.
This is another episode of the CCFR Radio Podcast. Remember, if you don't stand up for your own ability to own and use firearms, who will? Join the CCFR or donate right now at www.firearmrights.ca.